Okay, let's look at number 7. This is actually going to be the largest graph on this review. The things that we need to find are amplitude, period, phase shift, and vertical shift, and then we'll graph it. So, for the amplitude, we look for the number at the number in front of cosine or sine. So this is a -3, so we need to take the absolute value. So the absolute value of that, the amplitude, is 3. The period has to do with the number right in front of x, so we have cosine of 1/3 x, so we're going to have 2 pi divided by 1/3, which will become 2 pi times 3, so the period is 6 pi. It's a big function. Then the phase shift has to do with the number inside the parentheses. There's nothing else, so we do not have a phase shift. And then we have a vertical shift, would be the number at the end, and we do have that. So our vertical shift is 5, and it's going to go down 5. Oh my gosh, I keep trying to write that negative. So let's try that one more time. Down. Okay, so let's look at the graph. We know that our cosine pattern starts with 1, then 0, then -1, then 0, then 1. Okay, there's no phase shift, so once I write my graph, it can start at 0 and it's not going to shift at all. So it's going to be to 6 pi. Half of 6 pi is 3 pi. Halfway in between each of those will be our other increments. So we can take a second and work through that. So half of 3 pi over 2, or half of 3 pi is 3 pi over 2. And then we would want to add 3 pi over 2 to 3 pi. So if we did that, we'd have 3 pi over 2 plus 3 pi. That would be over 1, and we'd want it to be over 2, so multiply the top and bottom by 2. So that means we have 3 pi over 2 plus 6 pi over 2 to give us 9 pi over 2. So that is our value here, 9 pi over 2. Okay, so we've taken care of that. We have taken care of the period. There's no phase shift. So the amplitude, we take the number that was, remember, careful with a negative number in front of the equation. We take the absolute value to find the amplitude because amplitude asks for the height. However, if there's a negative in the original equation, we need to account for that. So we are going to multiply all of this by a -3, not just a +3. So this pattern becomes -3, 0, +3, 0, -3. So we've got the amplitude. The last thing to account for is the vertical shift. If this is going down 5, we are subtracting all of these by 5. So this is -8, -5, -2, -5, and -8. So this graph is heavy below the x-axis. So I'm going to draw my x-axis down more. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, and -8 will just fit down here. So let's graph all these points. At 0, we're going to have -8. At 3 pi over 2, we're going to have -5. At 3 pi, we're going to have -2. 9 pi over 2 is going to be back down to -5. And 6 pi is going to be back down to -8. So that is one period of this graph. And there we go.